You know, when it comes to these 2019 guys that were drafted from that draft, we speak about a lot of them pretty highly. We make the 1 year later videos for those that I think are actually notable. And we talk about some of these guys in the context of when they were drafted and how things turned out 1 year after the draft. But two guys whom we haven't spoken about in this manner yet are Dahlin Cozens and Kirby Dach. Dahlin Cozens, first off, big welcome onto the channel. This is the first video, I think, that we're making that actually centers around him, because every time we've mentioned Cozens, it's been in videos about the Sabres or videos about Middlestad, comparing him to other prospects and stuff. It's never really been about Cozens himself. For Dach, he's a guy whom we've made tons of videos about before. It all started with the Why I Want video back in the 2019 season. That was a very good video because it was made back in December, and I said that he was going to go third overall, which he did, so I'm very proud of that. But Dach has been inserting his name into the Capo, Kako, Jack Hughes discussions as well, because those three made the league in their first year. But today it's a weird topic we have, because Cozens and Dach are both over for Team Canada right now. They're practicing in the camps. They're in a position where they're projecting towards being some of the top players at the World Juniors. However, this is a weird situation where we saw earlier yesterday Cozens and Dach sit out their practice. And they sat it out because they showed up to the 11:30 a.m. skate right at 11:30. As a result, the coach ended up talking to them on the bench. He asked them a few things, he fist bumped them, and they went away. The normal practice for Team Canada continued, and Dach and Cozens watched from the stands. Let's go over onto Twitter and take a look at Ryan Rishaug's Twitter thread over here. This is what he said after the video that he tweeted about them actually getting fist bumped and then leaving the ice. At the end of the skate, he gathered the group and told the players on the ice that he gave Dach and Cozens the choice. Firstly, choice number one. Either he lets them back onto the ice and he lets them practice, but that shows that the rules can be bent, or option number two, they could take the hit, and they took the hit. He told Team Canada it showed how much Dach and Cozens care about the game and putting themselves below the rules. Now, it's actually really weird, this whole story, because Ryan Rishaug eventually did tweet out that the coach clarified that Dach and Cozens had treatment, and that's the reason why they were behind. They were over getting treatment from the medical staff, which is why they took the ice at 11:30 a.m. instead of taking it a little bit beforehand, even though practice was scheduled for 11:30 a.m. Maybe it's p.m., I don't know. It's 11:30, it just says. I'm assuming it's a.m. because it wouldn't really be p.m. That's a really weird thing, but tangent aside. But he stresses that there needs to be communication about these things. The coach reiterated that they made the choice to take the hit and leave instead of bending the rules for them. And this sparked a whole bunch of controversy online. First off, you had people talking about the angle that we were discussing in the title and the thumbnail of this video. The fact is, Dach and Cozens, two guys who we know can be very, very good players at this upcoming World Juniors tournament, two guys who will probably lead Team Canada in points, and who will probably just overtake everybody on the score sheet, let's be real here. They're two guys who ended up making a mistake, or at least, I don't know if it's going to be called a mistake per se, but they were in a position where they didn't show up for practice on time, technically. I mean, showing up at 11:30, even though the practice is at 11:30, it's technically on time, but hey, you would generally want to be out there earlier than that. The fact is, they were there and they allowed themselves to take the hit and not participate, even though the coach gave them the option to say, okay, if you guys want to come on, you'll come on, but it shows that the rules are able to be broken. Now, that honestly, to me, I get it, makes sense. You're trying to incorporate some sort of disciplinary life lesson kind of thing in there, but I don't know, man, there's something weird about that. It kind of feels like the connection here is not one between two players and an international team, it's one between two players and their coach that they've played under their whole lives, it seems like. Just in my own personal opinion, I don't really know if the World Juniors training camp, which is a U20 tournament where you play against mostly U20 competition, is the appropriate place to enforce disciplinary lifestyle, overall long-term development skills, especially for a guy like Kirby Dach, who is already an NHL player and he played against over 20-year-olds? Maybe that's just me, because I know that the coach did say that the opposing perspective to him allowing them to come back on is that, well, you're breaking the rules, which I guess rules should be set in place for a reason, I guess. But it's not like these rules were broken with malicious intent either. I get that he said that there needs to be communication, saying, okay, they told me, Dach and Cozens, they told me that they're going to be to practice a little bit late because they're getting treatment from the medical staff or whatever. It is just kind of odd because the World Juniors training camp is not something that goes on for a long time. In the short time frame that you have to set up everything, you're in a position where you need to build chemistry, you need to get your lines working all together, you need to get the guys familiar with each other. And for two of the top guys on the team to completely miss out on what could be a very influential practice period, I don't know how I feel about that. I know there's the whole, okay, they're owning up for their mistakes and they want to make sure that they're below the rules. I get that, but it just doesn't really feel all too great, if I were to be completely honest here. Maybe I'm wrong about this, who knows? But for Kirby Dach and Dylan Cozens as well, I mean, it's not like I'm going to say that they need the practice time because I know they're probably going to be very good players regardless. It's just, you know, what's that going to do for the rest of the team? One of these guys is probably going to be the captain of the squad, to be honest, so what does that do when one of your best players, if not the top two players in your squad, are not participating in practice? Especially for a reason where it's like, okay, the practice starts at 11:30, they showed up at 11:30. It's still technically on time, but you know, we already spoken about that. Anyways, let's go on to the actual scouting report side of this, I guess, because when it comes to Dylan Cozens and Kirby Dach, what you could expect from them at the World Juniors, for Kirby Dach first and foremost, my gosh, this guy had a similar rookie season in the NHL to Jack Hughes and Kaapo Kakko. We spoke about that in the video a few months ago, how their seasons were all so eerily similar from a points per game, points per 60, etc. standpoint, but you could debate that Kirby Dach had the best one, because when it comes to expectation, people were expecting Hughes and Kaapo Kakko to blow the roof off. But for Kirby Dach, there wasn't really that big of a highlight for him in that aspect. So the fact is, he came out here, was producing at a similar rate, showed himself off very, very well for the playoffs for the Chicago Blackhawks against the Edmonton Oilers and eventually the Vegas Golden Knights. Kirby Dach is a guy who, at 19 years old, is going to become absolutely phenomenal going into the next few years of his career. And playing behind a guy like Jonathan Toews already has a good foundation of strength and two-way play to build off of. We already saw Kirby Dach earlier at the Chicago Blackhawks training camp before the playoffs started, but this guy was absolutely dazzling. Earlier in this World Juniors camp too, this guy did a nice cross-crease pass where he dropped the puck over to his skate and he kicked it cross-crease. I've never seen that before. I've seen people kick it back onto their own skates, but never kick it with such force over to the other guy. It was a crazy move. You could just see Kirby Dach pulling out that big bag of tricks of his and just taking out whatever he can find. As for Dylan Cozens, he's a guy who, in the most recent season of play, was able to post himself 85 points in 51 games for the Lethbridge Hurricanes. He was at 9 points in 7 games at last year's World Juniors, so we're kind of expecting a little bit more. And he's in a position where he's a huge, powerful skater, 6 foot 385 pounds. He's 19 years old as well, so he's got himself a year of just dominance ahead. We'll see if he makes the Buffalo Sabres this upcoming season. I honestly would not be surprised in the slightest if he did, and he was started out in a top 6 role on the right wing, I guess, probably. That's just me spitting off the top of my head, but I do think Cozens is going to be in a great position. It's actually kind of funny, because I was never all too high on Cozens, especially compared to the other WHL guys like Dach and Krebs. I made that very known in the videos we made around that time period where we talked about Dach and Krebs and all that, but Dylan Cozens has really shown himself off to me as somebody who kind of proved me wrong in a sense, because everything that I was kind of concerned about, he's kind of disproved me at every step of the way there, man, honestly. This guy's such a strong skater. He has a really good two-way game. He's good at both ends of the ice. He can score. He's skilled. He's got a good shot. He is a very, very, very good hockey player, and man, this guy is just an absolute, like, what, a wrecking ball? Yeah, that's a good word. He's a wrecking ball out there. A high-velocity, big, heavy force that has a huge amount of skill that can absolutely just make plays left and right. I'm expecting these two guys to go out there and be some of the best players for Team Canada, but the fact is, we had a weird situation earlier on where they ended up owning up for a mistake that wasn't even really intended, but it was just kind of there because, hey, certain circumstances indicated that they showed up on practice a little bit too on time rather than a little bit earlier. It's weird, man. Talk to me in the comments what you think about this whole situation. Is the coach in the right here for giving him that option, or is this not really a big deal and this was blown out of proportion by that same coaching staff? I'm not really too sure personally, but I already shared my thoughts. It does kind of feel iffy, but I want you to tell me what you think in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.